Mayor, I'm getting ready to go on YouTube.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here for the November 13th City Council meeting of the City of Willamette. That's for 2023. We're just going to be continuing our meeting, so we do not need to do a roll call. But first, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment.
We've got Julie Jackson is here from Republic Services, and I'll kind of introduce her. She's coming up. We've been working on our franchise agreement update. I was hoping to have it on this meeting packet and just wasn't able to get it here on time, but wanted to let Julie speak a little bit about the update and answer any questions. And then I'll be bringing the franchise agreement renewal back to you at your meeting in December. And Julie can come back, or we can just have her online, or maybe save her the trip, but wanted to give her opportunity to talk through things with you a little bit and answer any questions about our franchise agreement with Republic Services. So Julie, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. As Chris said, we are working on a renewal of the franchise agreement. There's some pretty simple, just cleanup things in the agreement. One of them changes the definition of commingled recycling. That's kind of an interesting one. That has to do with the Recycling Modernization Act that we've been talking about for a long time in Oregon. It's getting a lot closer. A year from now, in fact, we will be working on implementing that one. So it just changes the definition of commingled recycling to be defined by the Plastics Pollution and Modernization Act. And I think you will see likely some new items. It's mostly focused on plastic and likely more plastics that can be recycled in Oregon. So that is a very good thing. We talk about, there's just some language cleanup. So there are a couple places that say within the franchise territory that are changing to within the waste shed. The waste shed is the county, Benton County is the waste shed that Willamette is in. There's really nothing too big in here that I can point out. It's just been a cleanup. There's been language for a long time that says we'll have an office within the franchise. We've never had an office within the franchise, but we have one in Corvallis. And we think that's close and within the waste shed. So we'll change some of that language. If you have any questions about the franchise, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, it's pretty simple, just clean up of some language in the franchise. I know where to look. Okay.
Julie, can you talk just briefly? I know we talked a little bit on the 20-gallon tank, and I think that came actually at one point from Councilor Causey, just concerned on the low-income households or the smaller households. And, you know, for some people, filling that, even the smaller container is a lot more than what they need. Can you just talk to that a little bit? Because it's been a long time since we've addressed them.
When we last did this, we agreed, the council at that point said to us, we really want to have something that we can do for folks who make very little waste and probably are on a fixed income and need a discount or some assistance with that. And so the way that it's been done here is that I can get to the rates. That rate has actually been held steady for the last 10 years. We haven't increased that rate when we've had other increases over the last 10 years. And I wish I had that right in front of me to tell you what it is. So we think at this 10-year mark, it's time to increase that rate by what the increase for this year would be, which is residential 4.06%. It's going to be about 50 cents, an increase of about 50 cents. And we think that makes some sense to increase that at the beginning of every 10-year contract year and look at it that way. That still keeps that rate significantly frankly where we are in other communities for that same container. So I think it's a good way to do it. If you have other thoughts about that, I'd like to hear that, and we can talk that. But it's 20 gallons, not very big. You think about your kitchen garbage can, that's about 13 gallons. And so it holds about maybe a bag and a half of a kitchen garbage can, but for a lot of people who live by themselves and don't buy lots of things, you know, the amount of waste you make is really commensurate with how much stuff you buy and what we're out there being consumers as. And so a lot of people just don't make very much waste. And so, you know, that 20-gallon cart seems to work for that.
That's the standard black cart, is that?
It is. It's so the smallest cart we have a 32, a 65, and a 90 cart. What we do for a 20-gallon is we pop rivet a little bucket inside that 32-gallon cart, and that holds 20 gallons. The reason we do it that way is that any smaller cart than that 32-gallon cart really doesn't do well on the street. It's too small to be picked up with the truck, and so it's just the same size cart with a barrier inside.
The other thing
Thank you.
The last thing I'll bring up that we're talking about a little bit still, and I think we're on the same page, is the annual recycling event that we do. My initial comments were that's definitely an important recycling event, but we also definitely have a need for that garbage collection as well. And so we're in conversations about that, what that would look like to still be a resource for like our code enforcement officer, to work with property owners who have some cleanup that they need to do, to have that be a resource that they can utilize. Also looking at other you know, property owners or renters that don't have the means to take something to the landfill. You know, that's a good spot that they can go. At the same time, we don't want people saving up their garbage throughout the year so they can go to the free dump event either. And so we're just looking at the language there and making sure that the program is doing what we want it to do and serving our immediate community within, you know, within.
Yeah, I think we want it to be a resource for those people who really need that and need a couch picked up. But, you know, we do find in communities, there are a couple communities that still have what they call free dump day, and people save trash and it sits in their front yard sometimes, or in the backyard, or in the driveway all year, and it's not a very pleasant situation in the community. So I think there's a happy medium between the two, and there's some good examples in other communities. For example, in Albany, they do something called the Big Pickup, and they kind of focus on a certain neighborhood or a certain number of blocks, and code enforcement talks with those folks and says, hey, here's a coupon for $5, you can come bring whatever amount it is, and they kind of focus on cleaning up specific areas. Sometimes it's a person who maybe is about to be cited for that, and the carrot is you can haul your own material here and you won't be cited, and that seems to work pretty well too. So it's been, I think, a good resource. In other places, we've seen it done a couple ways. I think the least effective way is to have free dump day. That would be my information on that. The other thing is, as we get moving toward July 1st, 2025, which is when the Recycling Modernization Act actually goes into effect, we know, for example, there's going to be a mattress take-back program that begins in actually 2024, and you will probably see a Extended Producer Responsibility Act. There already is one, but you'll see that take effect, and people will be able to bring mattresses probably at no cost. We don't know what it looks like quite yet, but the producers of those mattresses will incur the cost of returning those. That's one of the things we see a lot. We think our depot in Corvallis will probably take a lot more materials, styrofoam, plastic film, possibly even white goods, appliances, and those kinds of things. So I think it'll be easier to get rid of some things once that goes into effect too, and it will really change the face of recycling in Oregon in a good way. So, and then I would also just touch bases on kind of our annual visit to you. As you know, we have the refuse rate index. We we adjust rates based on a calculation. This year for residential customers, it's 4.06%. You guys have the same calculation. There are about 3 different ways this is calculated around the valley. You guys use the same one that Corvallis uses. Commercial's a little lower, it's 3.86%, and industrial is 4.9%. So just take it.
Thank you. Councilor Kazi?
This is probably Pandora's box, but can you speak to the future of Coffin Butte?
No. See, I would prefer not to, because there is a process in place. I know you've heard lots about it. Benton County has gone out for RFP for a consultant to put together what they're calling a sustainable materials management plan. I think that's been a long time coming to look at the future of the landfill. Many things. That's just one element of it. I think something we've been talking so much about the landfill last couple of years, we haven't talked about how to reduce the amount of waste that we make, because really the way we benefit is if we make less waste, not where we put it or which pot we put it into. So those things are all going to be included, and I think it's great. I think there will be, as this plan gets going, I think the city of Willamette will have the opportunity to participate with Benton County on that, as will all the other communities in the county. And I think that'll be a very positive thing. But we're kind of under a gag order right now until things get started.
Thank you. And we'll take Councilor McMorrin's question before we go ahead and go to the next speaker.
I just wanted to respond to Councilor Kazi really quick that I was on the county task force thing to develop that RFP for the landfill. So if you want to chat more about Coffin Butte, I've heard a lot about it over the last year or so and would be happy to chat. I am by no means an expert, but all the things have been jiggling around in my head more than I might like.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Julie, and offering that update. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
And
as you think about how you'd like to change the spring cleanup event, I think we can get the contract renewed and continue to talk about that if you're not sold on one way or the other of doing it. And if you'd like, I can send you a little report kind of talking about the different ways we see it being done out there. They're kind of some fun ways.
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
All right, we're happy to do that.
thank you so much. Any others signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I'm also honored to be able to invite Chaplain Dean Aithwaite, that's the executive chaplain for the Willamette Valley First Responder Chaplains, to join us this evening. I was honored to have Chaplain Aithwaite chat with Councilor McMorrin and I at the public safety event at the firehouse a few weeks ago. And I've had the pleasure to chat with them in the past as well. And while I was talking with Councilor McMorrin, he did touch upon some of their connection with veterans. And while I know it's not going to be the primary topic about tonight's conversation, I just really thought that it'd be great to have his message brought to us. And I really appreciate you being here, Chaplain. And we really welcome you and look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the invitation, council members, and thank you for hosting me. First of all, you can tell from my accent, I'm not from around these parts. If you need me to slow it down a little, just do this. I'll take the hint. My name's Dean Aithwaite. I've been a chaplain this is my 9th year. My background, I was a volunteer with Corvallis Fire for 10 years when I first arrived here in 2001. And I was in the British forces. I served in the British military for 5 years before I came here. 4th generation of my family to do so. I know why I've been built. I'm built to be a chaplain. I know my past, my experiences in military and fire service were all training ground for today. I have the honor and the privilege of serving our first responders as they go out there and serve everybody else. The information I shared with you here in the paper packets is just information, who we are, what we do, how we do it, because we're not going to get into that really tonight. I do want to really speak towards what we do in terms of our service. We go out there serving members of the community who experience crisis and who typically experience trauma and tragedy. So we do provide that comfort and that care for our neighbours as we journey with them through their grieving and through some of their practical help and assistance, particularly with our veterans. Our veterans, we provide an extra level of service because we believe in serving our veterans in life and in death. So we serve their families thereafter. I've been honoured to perform several funerals for some of our veterans who died through car crashes or some natural deaths. Daughters of American Revolution just recently replaced all of our flags, because we do use flags to cover our veterans when they're fallen, and those flags typically stay with the families thereafter. We also serve first responders, hence our name, Willamette Valley First Responder Chaplains. And we do that by riding with them in their engines, medic units, patrol cars, doing station visits, visiting parole and probation, corrections, even dispatch, because they're always the forgotten first responder. They're the first of our first responders, and they're the most forgotten, along with our patrol and fire and medic. And we do that by building relationship with them, and we say it's genuine and purposeful relationship to afford the opportunity to be afforded their trust. They give us their trust if we have a relationship with them. And what's really evident is the heart of our public servants runs deep. Sometimes we see this as generational. Sometimes we see that where the veterans and they came into service and they extend their service into our community. One thing that I get the honor and the privilege, having had service background with the military, is I get to serve our veterans who come into law enforcement and fire and corrections. And sometimes we see that there's wounds from their past. We see that there's been trauma, there's been tragedy. They may have physical injuries, but it's usually mental and emotional injuries that they still suffer from. They may work critical incidents, and then they may have a trigger that reignites some of the trauma. And having had those traumas, we get to have that privilege of walking that out because we're a trusted brother in arms, if you will. So we can do that. I'm very open and honest about my struggles and my journey through post-traumatic stress disorder. One of my last classes I took to become a chaplain was identifying symptoms of PTSD. I say PTSI, it's an injury. It's not really a disorder, and I'll explain that in a second. And so one of the last classes I was taking was identifying symptoms of post-traumatic stress injury, and I saw them all in me. And I went home to my wife. I'd been in public safety with military and fire service at that time with 15 years, and I didn't know that I had it. My wife did. She was quick to tell me that for 14 years he's been telling me to talk to somebody. So I share that now with our first responders. I share my vulnerability. If we're not willing to be vulnerable ourselves, how do we expect those who want to trust us to be able to seek confidence and counsel? And so I share how I admitted that I needed help, and I sought out a mental health professional to get treatment, and how uncomfortable it was, how embarrassing it was personally, how I've never spoke to anybody before, and I didn't know how to talk to anybody before, and how I cried in front of this young lady, and how I felt humiliated and embarrassed in that process. I shared how, for me, it was deeply troubling, but it was hugely rewarding. How I needed to suffer through that momentary embarrassment for the long-term gain. I share how they need to do that if they can't for themselves. So they need to do that for their families, their loved ones behind the scenes, their spouses and significant others. So I'm able to confront them sometimes with a little bit more truth. I get to share how if I can do it, you can do it. If you think I've got it put together, I'm just a work in progress, just like you. It's an injury, so therefore it needs constant care, it needs constant attention. In first response, we constantly compound our trauma. As a chaplain, I certainly do. I serve 3 counties, Lynn, Benton, and Marion, 18 agencies. So we are always running calls, and we don't get called to the fun stuff. We get called to the worst of stuff. And so I have to take care of my injury. And we train them now, and we teach critical incident stress management, crisis intervention, trauma events, and self-care, and caring for others. So we help them manage through their stress, their trauma, their triggers. And we work really closely with mental health professionals that specialize in that cultural competence of serving first responders, because they are a unique group. You've probably experienced them yourself if you haven't been one yourself. They are a unique group. They're willing to step into the fray when everybody else is stepping away. And the law enforcement goes into the fight when everybody's running from the fight. Firefighters run into the fire when everybody's running away from the fire. They are a unique group. So it takes a unique mental health professional to provide that level of care. Josh Sizemore is my guy in Corvallis. He has the Center for Developing Hope. He was also a combat medic himself. So he serves a lot of our people with that cultural capability because he's been there, he's experienced a lot of similar things, and he's able to provide that level of care thereafter. So as first responder chaplains, I just wanted to speak only and specifically to the veteran side of our service, because we have a lot of good men and women who came out of our military and are serving here locally in our community. And as a chaplain, we want to do everything that we can for them and their families, their loved ones behind the scenes, to keep them safe, keep them well, keep them healthy, and keep them in service should they choose to stay in service. An injury doesn't need to take you out. An injury just needs you to take care of yourself, take responsibility, and seek the help that you need. So, any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
I was so thrilled to learn about this organization. I think it was 3 years ago. Maybe there was a safety fair of some kind. It was over the Frolic and Rodeo grounds, and I was so impressed by this. How many working members do you have in the organization, and are any of them women?
Yes, ma'am. So full-time, I have Chaplain Mitch Warren in Marion County. He's my assistant chaplain, so he's a supervisor for the Marion County team as we hope to build it. We haven't got anybody else yet.
Okay.
And so he's on call 24/7, 365, and then myself. So I'm on call 24/7, 365. We are averaging 300 hours a month each, running the calls and doing we call them private confidential counsels. When a first responder will reach out to us seeking help or providing them some level of confidentiality and support, then we call them PCCs. So we have a lot of those where we're able to help mitigate their trauma or help diffuse trauma so it doesn't manifest itself further. In my first 7 years as a chaplain, I had 8 suicide interventions of first responders. The last 2 years, we've had none. And I think that's because we're mitigating the trauma so well. And the agencies are allowing us in to do the station visits and the ride-alongs. They come to our house and have dinner and barbecues. We have social activities with them, play sports with them, go camping with them. So we build life with them. So we're diffusing their trauma before it gets greater and gets out of control. So we have 2 full-time chaplains with Mitch and myself. We have 1 part-time chaplain, Sherry Sperlin, who specializes in grief counseling. She's a grief counselor. Just gone back to Corban University for a master's in marriage counseling and trauma therapy at 70 years young. And she's a remarkable lady. And so she's on our team also. She does a lot of our community follow-up when we've had deaths in the community and they need a little bit of grief support. She's our go-to person for that because she's uniquely gifted. And then I have an office manager, Hannah Keister, whose husband is also a Benton County deputy. And so we have a very small team. We haven't been able to get the message out there really of who we are, the unique work that we do, because it is very peculiar. Unless you've received our services, you really don't know who we are. And we also don't go out there promoting ourselves because it's not about us. It's about our first responders. We always want to defer back to them and show everybody the work that they're doing. We just stay on the outskirts of them. My hope is that we build more first responder chaplains having background in services, so military, law, fire, dispatch, corrections, parole, probation. Even ODOT, we serve ODOT for the incident responders. Or military, right? We want military veterans also to become chaplains. And then we want community resource chaplains where they may not be on scene serving in the crisis and the critical incident. It's somewhat gruesome at times, and they may not want that or have the capability of that, but they can serve the community as an extension of compassionate care, because all we're there to do is provide that level of compassionate care. We don't evangelize, we don't proselytize. It's not about religion. We have the chaplain banner and the title of chaplain for clergy penitent privileges for confidentiality. That's the key of why we need the chaplain title. Otherwise, we're just effectively crisis response specialists, because that's where all of our training and credentialing really is. So, thank you.
How can we as a council help you?
You're welcome to build a relationship with us should you choose to. There's an invitation in the packet there. We're doing a hot chocolate and cookie You call it cocoa and cookie open house, hot chocolate where I come from. And so, but there's an open house that we're doing in December, and you're welcome to come and by and meet the small team that we have. See our office in Albany. We had a grant that's paying for my office and it's paying for my office manager. And just get to know us and let us earn your trust too. If this is something that you wish to support behind the scenes, and speak on our behalf. And we'd love to share the information and feed you as much as you want to receive. And particularly out here in the local community, we are a 501c3, so we're fully dependent on support. We don't invoice agencies because it's public money, so we don't want that to inhibit service. We know they don't have very much money. So we don't want, it's not about our finances. We know we'll be able to get to them so long as we're willing to step in and make it possible. Some of the agencies do choose to financially contribute, and in doing so, we gladly accept their support, but we don't make that a priority. So we're fully dependent on individuals, local churches, local businesses, and then trying to find grants, which we don't really qualify for many grants because we have that religious foundation, so we don't qualify for 99% of the grants. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Chaplain, for being here. First time I talked with you, I just really enjoyed my conversation with you. And a few weeks ago, again, I was just really inspired by the work that you do and the message that you were sharing. And I just so happy to be able to invite you here tonight to chat with us and for us to learn a little bit more about what you do. With that, we do have a little gift for you that I cannot transfer to you from my location, but Councilor Causey, our council president, can offer that to you. It's a challenge coin from the city of Willamette.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Well, with that, we can then move to the consent agenda. Do we have anything that we'd like to have pulled or any minor edits to the consent agenda? Councilor Andrade?
I just have a question about number 4. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I would like to ask about it. So I don't know if I should ask the question now or.
Go ahead, that's fine.
I was a bit confused about the wording of the, oh, sorry, I lied. Wrong addenda. Never mind, just kidding. Just kidding.
Can we make a motion for the?
Sure. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilor Andrade and seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any further discussion? Councilor Causey?
I just wonder how many households are taking advantage of the water assistance program.
Currently 6 households in Willamette.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of passing the consent agenda as presented, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Great, thank you. And with that, we're going to move to our first bit of unfinished business, conversation about a endorsement letter, potential endorsement letter for the Indigenous Peoples Day holiday. Councilor Andrade, did you want to open us up with that?
Sure, thanks. So a while back, the Inclusivity Committee had discussed an Indigenous-led petition to make Indigenous Peoples Day a paid state holiday and day off of school for Oregonians. And the committee agreed to sign the petition as a committee and then recommended to council that they also sign on to the petition. When brought to council, there were several concerns, and the main ones that I had taken from the discussion were concerns about the timing of the action. It was about a month council deliberation, like the 1 month. Indigenous Peoples Day was about a month later. And so there were concerns about that timing. There were some philosophical disagreements about actions taken via the governor's executive orders. And then there was opposition to the phrase colonist holidays. And so then the council agreed that they liked the idea of the petition, or the idea that was put forth in the petition, but just, you know, had those major issues there. And so they tasked the committee with coming up with a new version to support this. And so the committee discussed what this could look like and came to the conclusion that it made more sense to not to try to keep as much of the original wording as possible to help prevent potential harm that could happen from trying to rephrase something written by Indigenous people for Indigenous. And so some of the concerns that the committee brought up were concerns about timing of the action in regard to the original petition and potential financial responsibilities with the bargaining agreements and union employees, and how we had just finished those agreements and everything. Another concern was about the authorship or the source of the original petition. And the last one was opposition to a statement that appeared to overgeneralize some information. And so I had stated that I believed that first part was kind of a moot point, because we amended the language to make it so that the instead of specifying a specific date, it says Indigenous Peoples Day, the second Monday of every October. So it doesn't have like a hard start time or anything like that. And then also, it's just kind of the right thing to do. So anyway, concerns about the authorship, like we know that it's written by Indigenous people. Indigenous Now, which was in that original agenda item summary that I had brought to council. And out of respect for those who created and shared the petition, I chose not to share additional information on the petition source. And then we also edited the a part on here so that it says there are many non-school holidays that Indigenous people might not celebrate, like Thanksgiving and President's Day. So it takes care of the colonist holiday issue, as well as the overgeneralization of assuming that all Indigenous people do not celebrate non-school holidays like Thanksgiving and President's Day. So, sorry, that was a bit disjointed. Been a day. Are there any questions?
Counselor Cosby.
To whom will this letter go?
I believe that is the choice of the council. Because originally it was just the petition that was going to be sent to wherever the petition was going to be sent. I don't remember what Councillor McMorrin's original motion. I think it was Councillor McMorrin's motion. If there was any sort of direction as to where to send the letter, but
I wonder if we could ask for Counselor McMorrin's input.
Yeah, I think what I had originally said was just that we would maybe want to send this to our legislators and elected officials, sort of, you know, on behalf of the city council. The only thing there is just like retaining the format of the letter in sort of the format that was used in the petition is not sort of usually what you would send to like a legislator, but I mean we could send them whatever we want. It just that I guess is my only caveat, and I apologize too. I missed the last two inclusivity meetings because of work, so I was not able to participate in kind of the letter process, so I apologize for that. But that I guess is my only sort of caveat to that, is I think originally I had kind of intended that the committee would help kind of redraft the letter in a more sort of typical like to a legislator form and then send it to the legislators. And this letter is, I mean, I'm not, it's nothing against the letter. It's just, it's basically the same as the petition, which is not sort of usually the kind of thing that legislators receive. So I guess it's up to the council where we want to send it. But yeah, or if we just kind of want to share it out that like this is a position we've taken. I guess, yeah.
Counselor Kazi?
As I recall, when you commented on the petition itself, you mentioned how ineffective it is to just do a blanket distribution. And perhaps based on what you just said, perhaps you can work with the Inclusivity Committee to structure it appropriately. But I guess, are you suggesting you send it to the legislators who represent us and the governor's office? And what are you suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would probably be most effective if we send it to Representative Gomberg and Senator Anderson. Just, I mean, they have an obligation to represent our community. So they would probably be a lot more likely to pay attention to what we have to say than a senator from Eastern Oregon who, you know, nothing against them, but they got elected to represent other communities, and it's their job to represent those communities and not us. So I can't really fault them if they don't do anything with what we send them. So yeah, I think maybe the solution could be if we can send sort of the language that the committee has approved, but just attach kind of like almost like a little cover letter to it or something, just being like, dear so-and-so, you know, the city council discussed this and is in support of this idea. Attached is like the language from our inclusivity committee and kind of give a little bit of the background. And I mean, I guess, yeah, that might work with, again, the note that like nothing's going to happen right now. The deadline to request bill drafts for the 2024 session was last Thursday. So there won't be a bill on this because, I mean, unless if someone already requested it, you know, this would be a 2025 thing. But so I guess there's no huge rush then to get in contact with them. But we could move forward with that with maybe like a cover letter kind of thing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I actually have several concerns. I have the problem of feeling like I work in this space every day, or knowing that I work in this space every day, and knowing what I feel like is an appropriate approach for this work. And I've had some conversations on this topic with tribal leaders. And when I first saw this, I had to ask myself, I didn't know, who is Indigenous Now? Never heard of them. I work in this space, but I've never heard of Indigenous Now. And it sounds like it, based upon a little bit of Googling and not finding anything and then finding a Facebook page, it sounds like it's a collection of artists. And I understand this is a collection of, probably people who are Indigenous folks, but it's not tribal nations that have developed this petition. It's not tribal leaders that have developed this petition. And I don't know that it's a majority of any of those folks. I have asked tribal leaders whether they would support this idea, and some are totally in support, and others are not. They said, you know what, we actually have our own holiday that we don't take that day off as a paid holiday. We actually support our own another day because it's culturally significant to us. And so for us, a city, to endorse a letter like this, it's not endorsed by tribal nations or a consortium of tribal nations, just makes me a bit uncomfortable, especially just in the space that I work in every single day. And knowing that I know lots of people who celebrate, lots of Indigenous people who celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm not sure about President's Day. It's nothing I've ever talked about with anybody, but it's just somewhat uncomfortable for me to see that in there. It just seems like it's putting a spin on this letter that I don't feel is entirely accurate. I know it is accurate. There are plenty of people who don't celebrate any holiday, any given day. And then one of my tribal leaders that I talked to today about this said, well, why haven't you gone to the Siletz or the Grand Ronde tribe, which are the tribes that are most close to you? And if you're talking about all of the Oregon tribes, why haven't you reached out to all the Oregon tribes to get their feedback on this idea? And so that was the critique that I had heard from today from a tribal leader that when I talked about this. So anyway, you can hear in my voice, I hate the fact that we have this letter in front of us, and I feel like it's not really appropriate or the way that things should be done. But I feel like I should be the biggest advocate for working with tribes amongst all of us, because of the work and space that I work in every single day. And it's not that I'm not in support of the idea, it's just that I'm not in support of this letter, the way it's written or the way that it came about. Councilor Andrade.
I appreciate you voicing your concerns, especially with regards to reaching out to tribal leaders. I will note that I have asked for this in the past, and I mean it's been a long time, and so I don't blame anyone if they've forgotten, but I have asked about ways in which we can connect more with the tribes, and kind of build that relationship so that we can reach out in that way, because currently I feel like it would be frowned upon if I, as a counselor, were to reach out to a tribal member or tribal leader when I am not representing the whole government to government situation. I know that there's certain protocol and etiquette and stuff that is different when you're working with sovereign nations, and I would appreciate if we had a conversation about that moving forward. The other thing to the whole, and so I guess, so to that point, with regards to, the Siletz and Grand Ronde tribes, yeah, we should know what they think of this. And also to your point about Indigenous now and who are they, and they seem to be an art collective and stuff. I don't think that part matters. I think the text is what matters, and the meaning behind it is what matters. If you agree with the text, then it shouldn't matter who wrote it. With regard, but again, that doesn't get to the point of, okay, well, the tribal nations who are from this area, like, do we know what they think and support? So I clearly don't know the answer to that. But that said, the fact that Indigenous people in Oregon are asking for this, I still think it is a worthy cause to support.
Oh, I'm sorry. And sorry about that, but just because the space that I work in, I cannot, like, I personally just can't get behind like individual people coming together to make a petition like this, whereas versus tribal nations and tribal leaders. Like the world that I work in, it doesn't matter what an individual says or asks for, it's the tribal nations. And we're a consortium of 57 tribal nations, and we don't do anything when even a single nation comes and asks us for something. It has to be a consensus. And that's just the world that I come from. I appreciate you. I know that we all have certain intentions and we just want to do the best thing for the world that's possible. I just don't know that this is the right way of going about it. I feel like there's a better way. And if you ever want to reach out to tribal leaders, I'm happy to have a conversation one-on-one with you. I don't think we need to do that in this space. I'm happy to do that anytime. And, I am available to try to help you make those connections, or I can help do that. Reach out. Honestly, tribal leaders often do not feel the obligation to engage with cities. That's just, they have no obligation, and it's not their priority, unless it is their priority. And I know the Sledge tribe did just a few weeks ago, they did just through lots of drama with the city of Siletz. You can look at the newspaper articles, but they did just elect to give their students Indigenous Peoples Day off. I don't know about paid holidays for staff, but I know the Siletz tribal leaders and then the school, they pushed the school board to do it. So anyway, you can look at that, but I know that was something that just happened this year. So anyway, I saw Councillor McMorrin's hand go up.
Well, I had thoughts, but I was also curious what the rest of the council had to say before I talk more.
I'll go.
Layman.
I'm in favor of this. Obviously, each of us would put our own spin on it and wordsmith it our own unique way. So I don't think nitpicking about that. I do agree with Councillor McMorrin. This, just in the form it is now, is not something I would probably want to send to my legislator. But the intent behind this letter and the sentiment, I agree with.
Thank you. Councillor Kazi.
Yes, I would say the mayor has made a number of points that I agree with. I also am in favor of this concept. I think Indigenous Peoples Day is much more appropriate than the current holiday that falls on that day, even though it's not recognized in Oregon. But I also think, as Councillor Layman said, we would all word this a little differently, and I certainly wouldn't assume that somebody didn't celebrate Thanksgiving or President's Day. That seems presumptuous. But I do support the concept. And I think ideally, I would like to meet with tribal leaders and get their input. I don't think that we have had Robert Kenta here to make a presentation, and we had the associate professor from OSU. I would love to have some of these people here and get their input rather than assume that I would know they do or don't want this to happen.
Thank you. Counselor McMorrin.
Well, Ruth really gave me a great segue into what I was thinking about, which, and I can't believe I'm about to say it because it feels like the most governmental kicking the can down the road thing. So if everyone hates it, I 10-4. But just given that us passing this right now probably would not affect the 2024 legislative session, I'm just curious sort of how we would feel about having Councilor Andrade and the mayor kind of like delegate to them a little bit this conversation about engaging with tribal leaders. And because I hear what the mayor's saying about tribes sometimes not wanting to engage with cities. I think we have a very positive relationship with our local tribes. And so I think just given that, like, I don't want to assume they wouldn't have anything to say about this, you know. And I guess I would like to do this right. And if we can have Councilor Andrade and the mayor maybe kind of put their heads together on kind of what doing it right looks like and how to do that, I would maybe prefer that, especially because I guess as far as my thought process goes, like if we do this tonight or if we do this in January, it's not gonna, like, you know, it's not like we have to do this in November or else the legislature won't do it. I think I would rather preserve and kind of honor and respect the good working relationship we have with the sluts, and kind of keep that going. And granted,
I would be happy to solicit the input. I can, you know, include Councilor Andrade on that, but solicit the input from from the tribal leaders that I know at all the tribes, including the Grand Ronde Sluts tribe.
Councilor Andrade, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think that this is an important request, like everyone has stated, and that you know, the social justice idea of like nothing about us without us, and that part is missing from here. Besides the source of the text, having additional input from the tribes connected to Willamette, yeah, I think that would be a really good thing to pursue.
Yeah. Should we make a motion, entertain a motion to table this until we're able to do that outreach?
Yeah, I guess just the one last question I had for Councilor Andrade was just how do you think the inclusivity committee would feel about that?
I think they would be supportive of it.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, then yeah, I'll move that we table this until, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that I move that we, oh, and then I see Chris's hand and I'm gonna let Chaz talk.
Councilor, or Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah. So I'll say the same thing Councilor McMorrin said. If you don't agree with it, so be it. I'll just put it out there. I think this captures the sentiment of the inclusivity committee. I don't see a lot of benefit in going back and forth in the inclusivity committee on this. I think their intent is very clear, what they like to see happen. One of the things that are powerful about a petition is that it's not one voice, but many, many voices that get represented in a petition. We've kind of lost that now because of the timing. So we're one voice, we're one city. I question whether it's the city's role and or responsibility or best use of our time to be getting a consortium of tribal leaders together and talking through this and how much time and effort we want to spend. But at the same time, I recognize that if we don't do it, maybe nobody will, and it has to start somewhere. So I guess my caution would just be, I think we should look for a quick way to conveniently get information to our elected officials, maybe forward it on to some tribal leaders as well as an FYI piece they've been copied on a petition that's gone to our leaders. But I'd recommend not spending a lot more time on this topic. We've kind of stated what our intent is. If our legislators know, and we forward it on to the tribal leaders as well within our region that we have good relationships with, you know, a letter from the city of Willamette, I don't think is going to be everything it takes to make this happen. I see this as one small player at the table, and really until other people know about this and really get behind it, I don't see it going very far. I haven't seen anything in regards to the petitions that did get signed. The Inclusivity Committee signed that petition. Several individuals within our community signed that petition. I've not seen any movement from that effort that would lead me to think that an additional letter from the city, even with discussions with the tribal leaders in our region, would have a whole lot of push. So again, I'm not saying don't push. I'm just saying we should look at how much time and effort we're putting in this effort when all we're really doing is stating, here's our position.
Councillor Kazi.
Thank you. I recognize that we have other priorities than this. But I also think this does give us a tremendous opportunity to strengthen our relationship with the tribe and to give us an opportunity to meet with tribal leaders. And if there are other things on the agenda, great, you know, but I would like to see the mayor and Councillor Andrade move forward with that.
Yes. To that point, Mayor, I just add, I'm great with that. And I think if the city council gives direction for the mayor and Councilor Andrade to reformat, redraft this and send this on, that's great. I'm just suggesting I don't need to come back here for additional reviews and additional comments. And I think everybody's seems to be there's a consensus. It's just a matter of what does it say and how's it written and who's it go to. And I don't know that the entire council needs to continue to be involved in that process.
Thank you, Chris. Councilor Warren.
Then I will move that we delegate this to the mayor and Councilor Andrade to come to a sort of consensus about tribal engagement and the letter. And then when they have reached a consensus, to go ahead and send this on, but to update the council. I was going to say posthumously, but that's not what I meant. After.
Hopefully not posthumously.
We have a motion made by Councilman Moore. Do we have a second?
Me.
So we seconded by Councilor Andrade. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Next on the agenda is the City Attorney and Prosecutorial Services.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Chelsea?
This is a follow-up from your October 30th meeting where you interviewed 2 firms for city attorney services and 1 firm for prosecutor services. I have given most information about the city prosecutor services. To do on your list would be to decide if you would like to move forward with one of the 2 city attorney firms with an agreement to be presented at a future meeting. We have some time for those discussions because we will be with Jim Brewer's office through March. The city prosecutor services is a little bit of a different situation. Brewer's office is currently contracting with another firm to provide prosecutor services for the city, and we would like to try to get back with Catherine Pratt if you choose to move forward with this firm, just to keep things consistent and get them moving ahead. So I have presented some information about staff going through the agreement, the costs of the the retainer and some additional hourly costs that were presented in the proposal for prosecutor services, as well as some information and research that we did for insurance requirements. And so I will, we have kind of two things to do here. Going to open it up for discussion. If you want to take the city attorney services first and then move to prosecutor, that might be the cleanest way to have the discussion. But if not, I welcome all the questions.
Excellent. Do you have any questions for the Assistant City Manager? Do we have many proposed motions? Councilor Causey.
I'd like to make a motion to select Ivers, Miller, and Massery Clark to represent the city of Willamette as prosecutor.
We have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by everybody else, but we'll take Andrade first. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Do we have any further? Oh, how about Councilor McMorrin?
I move to direct staff to come up with an agreement with, was it Beery, Elsner, and Hammond for city attorney services.
Excellent. We have a motion made by Councilor McMorrin and seconded by Councilor Lehman this time. Any further conversation, discussion, comment? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that. Thank you.
One more.
Oh, one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Councilor Crosby.
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a personal services agreement for prosecutor services with Ivers, Miller, and Massery Clark.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Andrade. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Excellent. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for that. Next on the agenda, we have new business, starting with an update on the strategic plan and an overview. I'm assuming City Manager Chris Workman.
Yeah, I can start out. Been as much time here as we'd like to tonight, but the intent is to start doing a quarterly report back on the strategic plan, make sure that it stays front of mind, update the city council on action items that have been taken, try to make note of action items that are scheduled to be taken, kind of coming up in the next quarter or during the year still. This is kind of an accountability tool for the council and for city staff. So that's kind of first and foremost, but it's also an opportunity if we need to make adjustments or tweaks, if we want to add things in here. We will still plan to do our kind of annual updates as we're building up and getting ready to enter budget season and start putting the budget together so we know what budgetary priorities are going to be, if those are going to change from what's in the current plan. So that will still take place the first of the year, probably February, March timeframe as the budget's getting prepared. But throughout the year, like tonight, if there's specific new objectives, action items that you would like the rest of the council to consider adding, then tonight's an opportunity to have that. If there's action items that have been completed or objectives that we feel like are no longer a priority, or we want to trade something new for something that's currently a priority, then that's an opportunity tonight as well to have that discussion. So what I would hope and foresee is that these quarterly updates provide, I won't put a time limit on, but some exchange of new ideas and conversation or questions to keep that somewhat limited, and just know that we're still going to look at annual updates and spend a little bit more time. That was probably been a work session or two followed with some meeting approvals and things. So a more formal annual approval and adoption. So with that said, the summary is pretty self-explanatory. I want to give thanks to my management team Specifically, Chelsea did a great job going through this, but everybody's had a hand in doing updates on their specific sections where they've got some oversight. So I want to thank my staff for going through this and getting those updates there on the status. Hopefully the format is such with the bullet points and underlines that the status update is pretty clear. We try to be concise, explained where we needed to, but we're very concise where we were available to. Did not change any action items or objectives. We just try to give you feedback on those action items identified for this year, what's been done this first quarter. First quarter being July, August, September. Ideally, we would have done this in October. Between my conferences and my health, just some things got lagged a little bit. And so you'll be seeing a second quarter update here in a couple months. So with that, I'm up for any questions. Happy to answer any specifics. Councillor Lehman had mentioned a few things by email that he wanted to potentially add in here, so I want to have time for that, but I'll return it back to you, Mayor, for proceeding through this.
Well, thank you very much. Why don't we let Councillor Lehman, why don't we just jump straight to your suggested additions first?
The first one is in theme 4 under goal 4.1, address affordable housing in Willamette. We have a few items that are listed under this goal that are kind of lackluster, just to be frank about it, encourage people and look for opportunities to support and stuff like that. Earlier this month, I sent out some information that I'd read about restricted housing and opportunities to maintain affordability in housing. But I think something as integral to our community as affordable housing, I think needs a little bit more attention. So I would like to propose that we create a housing committee to review and weigh in on different opportunities to promote affordable housing in the community. And I would like that committee to consist of 3 members from the city council, but also have an opportunity to invite community members to that, whether that's from housing providers or other interested parties to bring their lens to the view. So I don't know how you would like me to word that, but that's my objective, is to create a committee that can do a little bit deeper of a dive on some of these issues than we really are capable of doing at the council level.
I second that objective.
And so it seems, I'm wondering if we can do something a little bit higher level. I mean, we have the goal of 4.1 of addressing that. And so then having a city, the objective to create a committee or assign that to one of our existing committees.
So the problem I have with assigning it to one of our existing committees is that precludes anybody from outside of the city council from participating in those. I mean, you can have guest speakers. I'm not saying you can't have guest speakers and things like that, but I do feel that it would be a great benefit to have some other voices in the room besides just the city council and city staff.
Right. Yeah, so I'll just mention that Chris and I had this conversation in the last month after Councilor Lehman and I had a conversation about this. And we were going to propose that the Finance and Admin Committee take a look at a deeper dive at this in the next 3 or 4 months, because they are going to have a light schedule. It doesn't seem to me that we couldn't preclude or invite others to come and give input like we often do for other committees. But that was just something that seemed like it would make sense based upon the workload of the committees. Councilor McMorrin.
I am in favor of what Councilor Lehman's saying, and I think that another key distinction between kind of our existing committees and this is our existing committees are structured around city departments, and we don't have a housing department. Like, we wouldn't own I mean, I guess unless we start building housing, but like this is more of a like community development type of situation where we are, influencing privately owned property in the city and trying to sort of incentivize things or de-incentivize things. And it's not sort of just like the police committee talks about the police department, and the finance and administration committee talks about the finance and administration departments and the public, whereas this is sort of like, yeah, the city owns some property, but we also have planning codes, and it's sort of this task specific thing. And I think the other reason I'm big on it is there's like, as Councilor Lehman said, there's several things in the strategic plan which were a little vague and which it feels like we have not been giving a ton of attention to for, as some of the reasons Chris mentioned, they always seem to just get kind of pushed when there are more pressing things, when there's a reservoir to worry about, or there's, other big things that come up. We just kind of are like, well, the housing is like, we can deal with that next month. And I think having a committee that's specifically designated for it would be good, because I know, like, when we bought that piece of property on Main Street, we were like, we're not going to just let it sit there. We're going to actively talk about what we're going to do with it. And I don't think we've talked about it once since we bought it. That would be something this committee could do without having to balance it with other things on a committee agenda.
Right. Yeah, and I'll just mention that was the impetus, is that we were wanting to talk about those two properties and affordable housing, and we thought that it would be entirely appropriate for the Finance and Admin Committee to have a conversation about those two properties as it relates to affordable housing. So that was kind of the impetus for the idea of sending it to Finance and Admin, specifically because of those two publicly owned properties that we have. But Councilor Andrade.
As a member of the Finance and Admin Committee meeting, I also think that I like Councilor Lehman's suggestion. I think that while there might be a part of that conversation that could go to the Finance and Admin Committee, I think this is a much larger topic and encompasses other kinds of thinking that isn't necessarily specific to the department, as Councilor McMorrin had described our committee's functioning as. And then also, I was curious, Councilor Lehman, if you thought that community members not necessarily associated with these other agencies and stuff would also be on the, like, if it would be a larger committee or one that's, okay, cool.
Okay, so any further discussion? Would this be an ad hoc committee then? Or would you be suggesting that this be a permanent committee of the city and modifying the charter?
I guess I'll answer that question two ways. What I think is appropriate is probably an ad hoc committee, but I also feel that this subject is not going to go away. We're not going to solve it in a year or 2 years, and it's not going to go away. So it seems like it could be a permanent committee, but if you make a permanent committee, that seems, I don't know. I would prefer a permanent committee, but an ad hoc committee seems easier to do.
That could be a recommendation of an ad hoc committee. It needs to be permanent at some point.
That's what I meant to say.
So the motion is to create an ad hoc committee? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion, comments? Oh, I'm sorry. City Recorder?
You started out with suggestion. I know Councilor
Officially, no.
I will second
The ideas.
So I'm looking at an action item probably under objective 4.1.2, look for opportunities to support low and medium income housing. That's the objective. So an action item would be form do you want to just call that a housing committee, or do you want to specific to low income housing, or
Just housing.
so form a housing committee, form an ad hoc housing committee, and well, that could be an action item, form it.
Right.
And second action item would be to meet regularly, have the committee meet regularly and discuss ways to proceed with the city-owned properties related to housing and employment. So those would be two action items we could add under objective 4.1.2.
Perfect. That's what I meant.
again.
Okay. So any further discussion, comments? All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Awesome.
Okay, Council Lehman, do you have another suggested edit?
I do, and I'm trying to figure out where this one should go. I think it's under goal 5, which is promote healthy and clean neighborhoods. And it relates to the use of neighborhood electric vehicles. And I would like to create an objective, I don't know if it's an objective, no, it's not an objective, an action item to ask the Public Works Department, no, would it be Public Works, Police Committee to review opportunities around neighborhood electric vehicle regulation and come back with a suggestion for how we could implement the use of neighborhood electric vehicles in our community. That makes sense what I'm saying?
I wonder if you could just, I would like to understand your motivation behind this and your objective.
Sure. Okay, so we live in a pretty small town, and just as an example, 3 days a week, I walk to someplace in Corvallis and have lunch with Corvallis, in Willamette, and have lunch with my wife. And sometimes when it's raining, I get in my car instead. And I think it would be awesome if people could run errands in a golf cart or a smaller vehicle that's not highway safe vehicle, but still would be licensed and registered and street legal on segments of the street that are 35 miles an hour or lower posted. So you could drive around in town here, but you couldn't drive all the way to Safeway, as an example, in your golf cart. But if you wanted to run to Dollar General to get some sour cream for dinner, you don't have to fire up your F-350 to go do that. You can jump in your golf cart instead and loot less and whatnot. That's really the motivation behind it. Anecdotally, I spent about a week and a half in Galveston in the last year, and they have this ordinance also in Galveston. An amazing number of people just tool around that town in their golf carts. They have separate parking at some of the major attractions and restaurants and things like that, just for golf carts. And it's also a community thing. You can decorate your golf cart to look different ways, and they have parades, like the light parade that the city's getting ready to do. You can decorate your golf cart. And anyway, I think it would be good for the community, but also I think it puts forward the statement that we actually do care about reducing carbon emissions here. I know we've been working on like the Carbon Friendly Spaces initiative from the state. I think something like this just brings it to the top of people's mind that, there are alternatives to driving your car around town.
Okay, so just to get us on the right track, I'm going to second this motion. Any further conversation, questions, comments? Mr. McMorrin.
I guess questions, but like we're not making a policy decision right now. So I just maybe things to think about, but I'm curious how that works on the couplet, like if we have any power over what cars can drive there. And then I guess the only thing is I like the idea. I just also don't want this to come at the expense of improving bike infrastructure and making it safer and easier to bike in town. And I know the argument about weather and everything, but just that was the other thing I wanted to flag.
So this motion is to send this to committee for the further development and consideration. I see. City Attorney.
Yeah, so just a point of information, low-speed vehicles, or what Oregon calls these, they are four-wheel motor vehicles with a top speed of more than 20, but not more than 25 miles per hour. Local governments can create an ordinance which allows them to be operated in public right-of-way on those streets that fall within the speed limit for the vehicle itself.
So for example, we could say you can't use it on Main Street or Applegate in the couplet, but you could use it on Applegate east of the couplet and all the local roads that go back and forth. So, and you can I saw one case where the restriction was that if you wanted to cross one of those roads, you had to do it at a controlled intersection or something along those lines. So again, the safety of the people in the vehicles and the rest of the people driving regular cars is paramount in that. But that would be, again, what I'm recommending, that the police committee looks into that and sees what we can and can't do, and if it's feasible. And
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to send this to committee. All in favor, please. Or Councilor McMorrin, you have your hand up again, or you?
Oh, I guess I just wanted, I thought, are we adding it to the strategic plan or are we sending it to committee? I got.
I'm sorry, it's a put on the strategic plan to send it to create a committee,
Okay.
or to send it, yeah. Okay, all in favor, please, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Any other suggestions? Councilor Kazi.
Do you have one to bring up? There have been 2 homes in my neighborhood that have recently added small areas of artificial turf. And as you know, we're also considering or have ordered an artificial turf for the Veterans Memorial Park. But this prompted someone to email me with concerns about the environmental impact of artificial turf, which can release microplastics into the environment, which are consumed by everything and everyone. So I brought this to the attention of the assistant city manager, but the artificial turf had already been ordered, and I know our primary goal with respect to Cochrane Park was to provide accessibility for disabled individuals. So I didn't feel like it was appropriate to try and stop that project. But I would like to ask if this item could go to the Public Works Committee for consideration and recommendations, perhaps to be incorporated into the code with respect to materials that should or should not be used in the community.
nice.
So we have a, did you make, is that a motion?
Boy, it sure is a long one, isn't it?
You can make, I'm sure you can make it really short.
I move that this item be added to goal 4.5, promote healthy and clean neighborhoods, to have the Public Works Committee review appropriate synthetic turf options, if there are any, to be used in the community.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Councilor Kazi, seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any further discussion? Councilor McMorrin? No?
That was
all
a later thing.
in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Councilor Warren, you have your hand up?
I just had another thing to potentially add, but I'm still not exactly sure which section it should go in. Which was just like a goal of increasing pedestrian connectivity in the city. There's a lot of areas where it's difficult to be a pedestrian. In some of the neighborhoods, we've done a good job of having sort of pedestrian paths that connect roads, but in other neighborhoods, especially north of Main Street, there's like very long stretches, like specifically like 11th and 12th Street. If you live on the north end of 12th Street and want to go to the north end of 11th Street as a pedestrian, you still have to walk all the way down to like Pioneer and then all the way back up. And I've been doing a deep dive on this, as Chelsea knows, because I walked into her